It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now.
Load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
In this round, here's Quan LX.
Well, Charles, that was America's commander-in-chief, President Donald Trump, the head statesman of the most powerful nation on the earth. Wow. He did speak the raw and adulterated truth, though, that they've been fighting for so long that they don't even understand what the word peace really means. That's what he pretty much was saying. And that's why I never want to see America get involved in those conflicts in the Middle East, because we're attempting to fight that is a deeply rooted religious war. We're really getting involved in a theocracy in the Middle East with Israel and with Iran and other nations as such. But now there's a ceasefire. But can Iran really trust? Can the American people, can the world really trust when Donald Trump says there's a ceasefire? When he was negotiating a truce and a ceasefire, or a truce and nuclear disarmament with Iran, and at the same time plotting behind Iran's back with the IDF of how to secretly bomb and destroy Iranian facilities. Can the Iranian people truly trust that Donald Trump has brokered a fair deal? I don't trust any of it, but he's already saying that Israel just went crazy in dropping the bombs after they had an agreement. Iran, of course, is still retaliating. I think this is a flimsy ceasefire at best. And I also believe this, Trump, that America nor Israel was successful in destroying the nuclear arsenal and the nuclear facilities that they really needed to build a nuclear weapon. Within 1 year, I believe Iran will have a nuclear weapon, because all they did, they had so much notice that they were planning to bomb those nuclear facilities, that they built secret facilities elsewhere under the ground, perhaps in other countries like Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and then just hid their arsenal. And now that the ceasefire has come about, I guarantee you Iran will produce a nuclear weapon.
I'm not shocked that you're clearly playing on Team Iran. When you started this, you led with, can Iran trust? Can the world trust Iran? And the answer is no. The Iranian people can't trust their government, right? There are some that have been cheering. There were some protests in America today by Iranian citizens out in L.A. Who were hoping for regime change from this oppressive, monstrous. You led with theocracy, and you were talking about Israel. Of course, Israel does allow other religions and other people to serve at the highest level of its judiciary and its government. And, if people would just stop bombing stuff and killing children and killing women and blowing up
Israel?
cafes. No.
Because that's what Israel does.
I mean, you're interrupting. I mean the evil Islamists that you pretend don't exist in this world.
And not
that
the
are,
evil Zionists that are bombing everybody in that region.
I think everyone knows that isn't some Ivy League lemming or, someone that hates Jews. I think everyone knows that the problem is the radical Islamists. In fact, I think most Muslims know, right? And the ones that don't embrace this monotheistic infantata, death to America and death to Jews, doesn't really mean death to America and death to Jews nonsense, right? They know that the problem is the violent, right? In fact, when you look at...
So why is Israel slaughtering tens of thousands in Gaza who are who are babies and children?
Well,
these are babies and children.
There is a war. That war was started by Gaza, not by Hamas, but by Gaza. So you go to war with Hamas. Again, you're interrupting me. Well, you go to war with the people that started the war. That was Gaza. I know you play this shell game, right? They attacked. There was a response. And the real problem is that what Gazans did, the leadership of Gaza, They subverted all of this billions in aid and built tunnels, right? They built tunnels under schools. They put their rocket launchers behind hospitals and in hospitals. They did everything they could do because the leadership, the billionaire Muslim leadership of Gaza, they, of course, are staying in other countries. They want civilians to die so they can look and say martyr, and they can continue to brainwash kids that if they go and they blow up a cafe, then they'll get 72 virgins and live this life, and that we can't be accepting of other religions. See, that's the problem, the lack of pluralism, the failure to reform a religion that is forcing.
So obviously you have not investigated the Likud party.
Obviously
you have not thoroughly.
Obviously it's the Jews, right?
Inform yourself about the Likud party.
Okay.
Because the Likud party is a very party that Benjamin Netanyahu was over. You speak
an
about the
extremist
corruption
party.
in Gaza's leadership with Hamas.
Right.
I'm not arguing that. But guess what? Is not Benjamin Netanyahu under indictment right now in Israel for corruption?
Well, let's talk
and
about
he's
it.
waiting to go to a criminal trial right now. And there's protest marches, tens of thousands all throughout Israel, saying that he's only prolonging these wars to stop himself from being put on trial for criminal corruption charges.
Okay.
So you got Israelis by the tens of thousands protesting the Likud party and Benjamin Netanyahu, and says he is the centerpiece, while all of the hostages have not been released and while those wars are continuing to take place and there's no ceasefire.
It's his fault that the evil terrorists that you tacitly and sometimes
Well, it's his fault he let it happen. He had the intelligence.
Oh, it's his fault that they machine gunned
He had the
women.
intelligence. He let it happen.
It's his fault that
Why?
that evil Muslim terrorists machine gunned women and children.
And that was evil and that was wicked.
Beheaded babies.
And that was
well,
wicked.
you say that, but then you say, oh, no, it's not
absolutely
Gaza.
straight up
It's not
wicked.
Gaza. It's Hamas.
No,
it's not. No,
because
the
you
truth
go
is,
from Hamas starting the war
is-
to now blaming all the
truth
people of
is,
Gaza to
you-
subtly suggest what's happening to them is justified,
You look
and
at
you're
all
wrong.
the bombings. There's a bombing and rape problem in Sweden that's been going on for a few years. It all ties back to Islamist extremism.
And there's not a bombing and
mass
rape problem
migration.
taking place in America?
Okay, there's not a bombing problem.
Oh, there's
in
a bombing
America,
problem in America.
Right? But
you ever heard of A.P. Murray Federal Building?
I
Timothy
get it.
McVeigh?
Yeah, and he got executed.
You ever heard of Mr. Nichols, who shot up the Olympics in Atlanta? These are white men.
Let's talk about the Likud, right? And you mean the people that were prosecuted and put to death for it as a crime?
And they're put to death in Israel?
No.
These criminals, when they do this.
No. When the Gazans went across and killed all
When
the women and
Hamas went
children,
across?
and they came back. No, there was lots of Gazans, right? And they came back to a party, to a celebration where they paraded raped women with bleeding butts all over the city, and they did the dead bodies, and people called. There's recordings of people calling their parents and bragging that they
Sounds
just
like
killed
what
10
happened in
Jews.
Tulsa,
No,
Oklahoma,
it doesn't sound like
with
anything.
black people
It
when
doesn't
they were
sound like
murdered,
anything.
lynched, raped,
I
and
get
murdered
it. I
by
get
white
it.
people,
I
white
get it.
mobs,
You want to talk
who
about,
justified it
you
in
wanna
Tulsa,
talk
Oklahoma.
about
What happened
120
right in
years
Arkansas,
ago? You know,
Rosewood,
right,
Florida,
hey,
Louisiana, right here in
again,
Houston, when
again,
mass murders took place
again,
of black people from angry mobs of
again,
white people who claim to be Christian, who claim to love Jesus.
You don't want to talk about anything today.
There's evil in every
you
religion.
don't want to stay.
There's
no.
evil people in every religion, man.
Let's be honest, right? The violent, intolerant extremism, there's one religion that seems to have a really, really big problem with it, and that's the Islamic faith. And the problem is Muslims like you not calling out the ones that do it, right?
Oh, I've always done that.
Well, but now
But at
honestly,
the same time,
who
I'm
suffers
balanced
the worst?
in my critique.
Who suffers the worst?
I'm balancing my condemnation.
No, you're not. You're
Because
not
if
balanced
it's
at
evil,
all. You just
I don't
hate
care if you're a
Jews.
Muslim, Christian, Jew, or Hindu. If
Okay.
it's evil, call it out.
Okay.
But here's the problem.
Then why are you
I
on
have
Team
never,
Iran? Why
I
are you
have
on Team
never,
Iran?
I have never heard you open your mouth one time to condemn what Benjamin Netanyahu was doing to babies
That's
in
not
Israel,
true.
in Palestine.
That's not true.
What he's doing is killing babies.
That's absolutely on
bombing
this very,
hospitals.
on this very show. Well, first of all,
You don't say
first of
nothing
all,
about that.
Israel made an incredible effort to tell people to leave areas.
That's an
before
incredible
they bombed
lie
it.
that they told.
That is not a lie, but. More importantly, I do and have said on this show that I have a problem with the scope of the bombing campaign in Gaza and the plan to just relocate everybody. And I go back to wishing.
But I told you that was the plan.
But here's the thing.
And you said I was a lie.
Well, here's the thing.
I told you that was the
No, I
plan,
didn't.
and you said I was a lie,
no.
and that was not going to happen.
What
I said it
you
was
said-
ethnic cleansing.
what
It
you
was
said-
ethnic cleansing.
what-
Is that not what Benjamin Netanyahu
No,
was doing?
I disagree.
It's ethnic cleansing.
No.
Now they're saying they all need to go.
Okay, but what you
So what is
actually
that?
said was that they planned October 7th to justify it, as in they being Netanyahu.
No, Hamas
Okay,
planned it.
But here's a
I
real
said,
key difference.
I said Netanyahu allowed it to happen because he had intelligence
Absolutely not
that it
true.
was about to take place
But
on October
here's
7th.
the real big difference, right? You talk about, well, Netanyahu's being prosecuted for corruption. Who was prosecuting him for corruption? The state of Israel. They've been prosecuting him for a long time. And every time the Likud lose power, right, and a non-radical, non-conservative government takes place,
A liberal party.
and they dial back the security measures, what happens? People put on suicide vests and go kill little kids, right? And you act like it doesn't happen. But Israel is prosecuting Netanyahu. But what is Gaza doing? When people go and microwave babies, right? They cheer and they celebrate and they have a good time. And not just Gaza. All over the world, we saw all these parades and these protests on October 8th, right? Well, we're just protesting what we think Israel's going to do after we machine gun all these poor girls, right?
Is that
And all
not,
these
is that
stupid
not what
lemmings.
Israel says?
What do you mean? Is that not
Israel
Israel
says that we perceive Iran to be a threat. We perceive and think that they want to create nuclear
Iran-
weapons to bomb us. So because we feel threatened and we think they're doing something, we have a right to bomb them. Is that not what Israel's saying? The same thing?
The whole Middle East, except other radical Islamist regimes, which there aren't as many as you would like to believe.
Radical regimes?
They're all happy. They're all happy that Trump did what he did. Saudi Arabia is incredibly happy, right, that Trump took out those nuclear facilities. And of course, he did it in a way like Israel. He warned people, he let people leave, and he let them probably take nuclear materials out, but he destroyed the
And you know why he
infrastructure and the
did?
facilities because
Why
he
would he
didn't
do
want
that?
to kill people.
Because he was
right?
angry with
Because-
Israel.
Because of the West.
Because he was
no,
angry that Israel
the
had
West-
betrayed him
the
and
West
dropped those
doesn't
bombs
want-
without his permission.
The West doesn't want to kill people. Israel has done what they can to limit it. I think they didn't do enough. So has America. You know who wants to kill people? It's Iran and crazy Islamist
The
terrorists.
West has always killed people. You know better than that.
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make the decision or at least get a vote. Because Ron is telling me.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Now, Quanell, in the last segment, you were beginning, before we veered off course, we're beginning to be a little hypercritical of the stridency and the foul language of our president, right? When he dropped an F-bomb talking about Israel and Iran. And I agree, it's tacky. I think it's tacky to the children of America. But here we have Jasmine Crockett, the Dallas area congresswoman, failed lawyer. I mean, she's still a lawyer, but a very not lucrative. She, like many people, didn't really make a whole lot of money. I think she made like 22 grand and then transferred to finding a good government job.
Like all politicians.
And now she's worth millions and millions of dollars. I don't know how
like
that
all the
works.
politicians on both sides of the aisle.
Well, it sounds more like the Democrats.
They go there broke and they
Right.
get rich.
Right.
Democrats and
but
Republicans.
Jasmine Crockett telling a crowd of adoring people that our president should have gone to Congress first, right? That she was the one that should have been the decider, and then she clarified and said I should have been able to vote on it. What I find odd, because AOC's talking impeachment again. What is this, impeachment round 4? What I find so odd about the Democrats is, because you don't really hear it from the Republicans, is that when Clinton was shooting missiles, no one talked about the need to get Congress's approval. When Obama, who shot a lot of missiles, including missiles at Iran, there was no one clamoring for impeachment and the need to go to Congress,
and
right?
back to secret assassination of Muammar Gaddafi.
Right. Our executive, our very strong executive. I think Barack Obama was an incredibly strong executive and made some decisions I agree with, some I disagree with, but he was allowed to be the executive. I would argue that Trump in his first term was never really allowed to be, because he had this fabricated cloud with a false Steele dossier saying he was colluding with Russia and he was taking golden showers from all this nonsense that led to the Comey investigation that went nowhere, was an effort to subvert the outcome of that election. It was the anti-democratic, while equally the left was screaming that he's a threat to democracy. You were screaming that earlier this week, that he's a threat to democracy, right? But now we have Jasmine Crockett and AOC and all these people are saying, I effing am the one that should decide, as if she is the commander-in-chief. This absurdly absurd politician. No, I think she does really well. She, with her dances and all that, the way she engages the kids today on the TikToks and the Instagrams, right? But I don't think she really is a statesperson of merit. And I think she is misguided by this liberal rhetoric, and I considered myself a liberal almost all of my life, that somehow our elected commander-in-chief doesn't have the right and that should somehow be impeached. You were saying that, I believe, earlier this week, for taking military action. I think, thank God, those facilities are destroyed, and it ain't Jasmine's business, just like it wasn't the Republicans' business when it was Obama.
Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Crockett, is a strong fighting sister for her constituents in her district, and she has been known to be an uncompromising voice to speak for those who don't have a voice. She speaks to the hurt, the pain, and with passion for those who want her to speak that way, because the people in this country are angry with government, period, on both sides of the aisle. But I would say to Sister Jasmine, Sister, I love your fearlessness, I love your courage, but I don't like the language, because many young black girls who are striving to become the next congresswoman, the next corporate woman, the next state senator, etc., they're watching you, and you are a leadership figure to them. Remember, Sister, grandmother would always say, Sister Crockett, don't wallow in the ditch with a fool to address the fool. So she spoke harsh words the same way our pathetic language-speaking president did. So really, when you look at America, both sides of the aisle is losing civility, losing self-respect, and putting their own desires first before the American people. Charles, it's not just Jasmine Crockett and the Democrats calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump for entering the war and bombing Iran without the consent of the United States Congress. When Sister Jasmine Crockett was right, it is Congress that has the power and authority to declare war. And the president has the right and should go before Congress and present them with the evidence that backs up declaring war and bombing another sovereign nation. He did not do that. Charles, but it's mega supporters of the very base of President Trump, loud mega supporters, influential mega supporters, who are calling for his impeachment too. Even Tucker Carlson said he should be impeached. Even O'Bannon, a longtime friend and supporter and diehard backer of President Trump, said President Trump was wrong for bombing Iran. This is not a war we should be in. And there are other strong, uncompromising, fearless mega supporters who are hardliners who are saying the same thing. So the cry is coming from both sides of the aisle to a man who promised he was a man to end wars and not start them and get in them. He broke many promises. I'll end the Ukrainian war with Russia in 48 hours. Well, we see that's a lie. He claimed that Obama was weak for bombing anything in Iran because he's just weak and he couldn't get a deal done. Well, guess what? He did the same thing President Obama did. So the American people are becoming more frustrated. They're becoming more suspect of government, and they're becoming distrusting of elected officials. And you look at the protesters in the streets and the hardliners on both sides of the aisle, liberal and Republican conservatives. America is unraveling before our eyes.
I don't think America is unraveling. I do think social media has given a platform to a lot of very stupid people to be very loud and uneducated. And of course, all of this Soros and other oligarch-backed protests where people are being paid to protest, right? It's not really sincere protest when you're taking money to be out there. And we have this permanent state of activism, right? And we have professional do-gooders. And we see now Now that USAID has been cut off, we also see the financial troubles of the Democratic Party that are glaring. But I don't think we're unraveling. I do think that people are sick of it, but I don't think you're being honest. When you talk about, you said O'Bannon, I think you mean Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon isn't calling for his impeachment. Tucker Carlson isn't calling for impeachment. They are being critical of the decision, and I am being critical.
Did say it's an impeachable offense.
But there is a huge, vast difference between calling for someone's impeachment, and that used to matter, right? It used to be a big deal. It used to be a big deal, right? And then, well, the Whitewater stuff, and I was a Clinton supporter, the Whitewater stuff was concerning, but yeah, it's just become this constant, never-ending
and they all just
bleed.
use it now.
Impeach, impeach, impeach. But of course, the Democrats have taken it far too far, right? The Democrats were aware that the Steele dossier, the powerful Democrats, that the Steele dossier was false, right? And they pushed it and ramrodded it down our throat with the media assist, who I imagine, if they're real journalists, were also aware it was false. And we've just heard it, so we're tired. It's white noise, right? So it becomes a thing where presidents can get away with no consequence.
You're backing up what I'm saying.
No,
the
I'm
American
not.
people are becoming more and more distrustful of elected officials and the government.
Well, it's not as bad as it was in the 70s.
Yes, it is.
No, well, during the Nixon, during Watergate.
You didn't see 5 million take to the street in the 70s on the weekend. But you just watched 5 million 2 weeks ago take to the streets against the sitting president.
That No Kings protest was funded by oligarchs, and it was stupid.
The whole world is unraveling before our eyes.
I disagree.
And the last greatest superpower, America, is unraveling the most on the largest stage.
The problem that the world is having, and I'll focus on the Western world, the problem that the Western world is having is that for the last 15 years, 20 years, we have facilitated mass unchecked migration into Europe and into America, right? And we are using all of that money to instead do things for our citizens, black Americans, white Americans, Latin Americans of every ethnicity.
Switzerland?
Instead of doing stuff for them.
Have you saw the United Kingdom?
Yeah, well, Switzerland still has rejected most of it. But there's a reason.
There's
a reason Poland's doing so well. No mass migration. That's the problem in America right now, not this other stuff.
The demographics have flipped.
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.